Afternoon, everybody. All right, let me just get sorted here, give you a good backdrop. There you go. All right, I'm all yours.
Rob, it's Ben Davis from Seven. Mate, congratulations. Big coup to get this over the Kiwis.
Thanks, Ben. Yes, look, we see it as a great opportunity for rugby in Australia, clearly. And I think with our SANZAAR joint venture partners, they understand that we can put on a good show, and that's what we're going to aim to do.
Hi, Rob. Julian Lennon here from the Daily Telegraph. Mate, can you talk about the timeline before deciding where the matches are going to be played, and what are going to be the factors between New South Wales and Queensland? So, I mean, is it going to be 5 rounds in New South Wales and 1 in Queensland? What's likely to happen, and what are the factors?
Right, Julian. Well, look, the draft draw is being discussed with the SANZAAR partners right now. I think you can anticipate that it will be centrally located in New South Wales. However, we do have a contractual arrangement with Queensland to play a Bledisloe Cup in Queensland this year. So 1 game will be up there. We'll be looking at scheduling double headers wherever possible and trying to utilise the key infrastructure within New South Wales.
What stadiums are you looking at the moment in New South Wales, Rob?
Well, the obvious ones, ANZ, Bank West, possibly Newcastle, would be 3 favourites. We've been playing out of many of them for many years, and certainly the Super Rugby AU tournament this year has been moved around. So we have good relationships with Destination New South Wales, clearly, who have been a wonderful supporter, and the New South Wales government. So we'll work with them on what makes sense for the government and for us.
And there's been some talk around crowd numbers. I know it's obviously early days and you've still got a while to go, but what was the pitch in terms of, possible crowd numbers, and just also regarding crowd revenue, whether that will be split between the unions at all, or it's just Australia's good luck?
No, our proposal has a base case of crowd numbers in it. So what exists now as far as the limits is what we put in as a base case. We're hopeful that there might be improvement on those crowd numbers as we move forward over the next couple of months. And if that is indeed the case, then that will be a great win, both for the fans who can get to come and watch some of this wonderful rugby, but also for the game. The way that SANZAAR has approached this is that very much all hands in the middle, where all expenses will be pooled and all revenue will be pooled, and then the profit share will be split amongst the SANZAAR partners equally. So it's a very fair approach. I think it incentivises everybody to make it successful, and I couldn't be more happy, frankly, with the attitude of New Zealand and South Africa and Argentina in helping to bring this about.
Hi, Rob. It's Jeff Parks here from the Raw. Will the schedule for the whole tournament fall within an approved international window, and will all sides be at full strength?
Yes, Jeff, we're anticipating that the answer to both those questions would be yes. Clearly, COVID is impacting each union differently. Unfortunately for ourselves in New Zealand, we've been able to stand up a domestic competition, which has been wonderful for us, more challenging for the Argentinians and South Africa. That said, both those countries are very keen to participate. They'll be bringing their strongest teams, and they'll be preparing to the best of their ability under the restrictions they have in their countries.
Rob, is there a digit contingency if South Africa can't play? Do you have another country that you can bring in?
Well, look, we're not anticipating that's going to be a problem. We could, of course, stand up the competition with 3 teams only. That would be an option. But really, South Africa is confident that working with their government, they'll be able to participate. But at this point in time, given the restrictions within the country, they're just not in a position now to guarantee it. But they're confident that they will get to that position in the coming weeks.
Rob, what's going to be the quarantine process for South Africa and Argentina? Like, is it going to be a hard lockdown, a bubble, within a hub, or and when do you expect that how long before that first game they need to get?
Tom, it's going to be consistent with how the New South Wales government have treated other visiting teams, like the New Zealand Warriors men's and women's team. So it will be a bubble concept, and testing will take place over a 14-day quarantine period within that bubble, where full training can take place. And that has been the government's position to date, and they've reassured us that that will remain their position, and that will be consistent for every team in the TRC.
Rob, Christy Dorian here. We've seen in the Northern Hemisphere the 8 nations appear from 6 to 8 nations. Was there ever an idea, a possibility of including Japan and even being able to expand to have a 5 nations concept?
Oh, look, those discussions, Christy, are going on, and they've been going on for a while now. I can't see that happening clearly this year. And depending on how COVID continues to impact our world next year, we'll see what plays out. But there's no commitments at this point in time, but there are ongoing discussions.
Rob, Andrew Saville here from Television New Zealand. As you can imagine, there's a few miffed people over this side of the ditch today. Any words for us?
Look, Andrew, yes, I can understand the disappointment. I know that Mark Robinson and the team in New Zealand have put in an enormous amount of work to try and put together the strongest proposal, and for that they should be congratulated. I think at the end of the day, there are certain aspects outside Mark and the team's control over there, quarantine being a major one. And, what we're all trying to achieve as SANZAAR joint venture partners is to stand up the best competition and deliver a result for the game in each of our nations. And so where we think that is going to be most likely to be achieved weighed heavily on the decision. And I think quarantine requirements that we have here, a proven track record of how the New South Wales government and Premier Berejiklian is managing COVID here and keeping the state running, I think just work to our advantage. And, in some ways I feel sorry for Mark and the team. In other ways, I'm delighted for us and for Australian rugby and the fans of rugby, because this is going to be the equivalent of a mini World Cup played over 6 weeks. And I think you couldn't get a better finish to the year of what has been a hell of a tough year for everybody, to have some world-class rugby played in Australia.
Are you surprised that after 3 months' work, New Zealand was in the box seat? The government appears to have dilly-dallied around. They have all these strict quarantine rules, groups of 10, groups of 15, groups of 25. We've basically beaten COVID, but we can't host a tournament like this. Are you surprised by what's gone on?
Look, I'm not close enough to your government and their protocols and how they see managing COVID. I understand that they've taken a hard line on it, and I appreciate the reasons why they might choose to do that. Each government, and frankly you'll see within the states here, has a different approach. So I think we've just been fortunate to have a New South Wales government who has seen this opportunity as one to underscore the fact that the economy here in New South Wales is open for business, and they're looking to attract events and opportunities to try and drive the economy at the end of a really hard year. So we've just got to concentrate on what we can influence, and that's what we did. And New Zealand, have had to do the same. And unfortunately, it didn't pay for them this time.
Oh, well, we'll get you back on the field, mate.
I'm sure you're going to give it a red hot crack.
Rob, can you tell me with the 2 Bledisloes that are now being transferred to New Zealand, those quarantine regulations that man was just describing, which break it down into 3 days in isolation, then a test, then a stage withdrawal, are they going to apply for the Bledisloe tests as well?
Yes, they will, Wayne, and we're up for that. We have to work with what we have to work with. The government, the New Zealand government, did change them somewhat in the last few days to make it a little less restrictive. But that being said, the protocols are there, and the Wallabies are going to have to honour those protocols, and they're ready to do it.
Rob, you just described the Rugby Championship as potentially being able to have a bit of a mini World Cup per se. How big an opportunity is it to showcase rugby in Australia?
I think it's an enormous opportunity. I mean, on the back of a heavily disrupted calendar this year, to be able to play test match rugby with 4 of the top global test unions in a competition format such that it will be over a 6-week period in a time of year that's not really traditional to play rugby, but at a time of year where in a nice way is not a lot of other content that's going to compete with us. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I think it's fantastic for our game. I think it's wonderful for fans. You're going to potentially be able to go to one ground and experience 2 test matches, as I said, out of 4 of the best nations in the world. And that will be happening week in, week out in New South Wales. So what a great opportunity for the game and for fans.
Rob, what's the likelihood there's going to be condensed window, by way of trying to maybe do 6-day turnarounds, a midweek game, albeit because that obviously last game is on December 12. You guys had the same issue wanting guys back before Christmas, so they're not in quarantine. What's been the chat around that at this stage by way of when that last game could be and trying to get the Kiwis back before Christmas?
Yeah, we're working through that, Tom. I mean, clearly having anybody, players, staff, anybody associated with this tournament in quarantine over Christmas Day is not something that we would look forward to, and anybody would look forward to. So the teams between ourselves and SANZAR are looking at how we can construct a draw that is going to overcome that, so that the tournament will be finished, still allowing for appropriate individual countries' quarantine processes, so that teams and staff will be back in time for Christmas.
Is it conceivable Argentina or South Africa, given that they won't have those 2 leading tests, like the Wallabies will against the All Blacks, might in fact play another side, a tool match per se in the lead up to the Rugby Championship?
Yeah, certainly Argentina's asked for some warm-up games here in Australia, and we'd be more than happy to help arrange those. So that's being discussed right now. Argentina, unfortunately, have not been able to play any rugby, so those matches will be really important for them. I believe South Africa are looking at getting a domestic competition up and running in the coming weeks. So they believe that they're going to have some leading games in South Africa before they travel.
Rob, can you tell us what the arrangements are with the Pumas and Mario Ledesma? At news today that he's tested positive. Does that complicate matters in any way?
Not at this point, Wayne, because we're still far enough out from the tournament to be able to manage that. So the Pumas have gone into a bubble arrangement over there. They're having regular testing, and those that have been tested positive, be them asymptomatic or otherwise, are being removed from the environment and separated. And that will happen during the course of them being in the bubble. And we anticipate then that they'll be all negative and ready to go sooner than later, and we'll be able to fulfil all the health requirements and the protocols here in Australia.
And Rob, obviously it was critical getting these games for broadcast dollars. Do you expect there to be any implications this year on that, or do you expect Fox and 10 to pay a full freight for these games?
Oh no, the broadcast situation was already baked into previous deals. We will be delivering a full TRC as we had promised the broadcasters months and months ago. And so nothing changes there. That was baked into existing deals. And I know the broadcasters are very excited by it, and so they should be. I know that Fox and 10 here will love the fact that they're getting just such quality rugby at that time of the year, and will drive, I hope, some really great subscriptions and viewership for them.
Is there likely to be any spin-offs in terms of broadcast negotiations?
Wayne, I'm not commenting on broadcast negotiations.
Fair enough.
Just by way of the hubs, are they going to be like, the team staying in hotels? Are they going to be sort of next to grounds that you're looking to play at? I mean, I know the cricketers were looking to do something similar at Adelaide Oval. Have you got any idea whether, how that will work at early stage?
Yeah, Tom, we're working through with our partner IHG, who's our accommodation partner, and the New South Wales government to identify appropriate accommodation where there are training fields that are nearby for teams to be able to come and quarantine in those establishments and train in a bubble to fulfil the quarantine protocols. So planning on that is well underway.
Rob, this is Ian from Reuters here. I know quarantine in New Zealand may have been a factor in this decision, but have the commercial considerations that have helped New Zealand get over it?
You'll have to ask Mark Robinson that question. Other than commercial considerations were an important criteria, I believe, in assessing the two proposals. And, the New South Wales government, I have to say, and Destination New South Wales and Tourism Australia really stepped up. And as they have done in the past with rugby, we've had long-term relationships with those organisations, and they wanted this tournament, and they are partnering with us financially to make sure this tournament is a success. And all SANZAAR partners will therefore enjoy the benefit of hopefully what will be a profitable tournament.
Rob, will the match officials be drawn from all the 4 participating nations?
Yes, the plan would be that New Zealand, Australia and South Africa will provide 2 match officials, as in referees, and Argentina will provide 1, and they will then circulate through the matches. And then Australia and possibly New Zealand will provide the other officials.
In terms of Argentina's warm-up games, who are we talking there if they're able to line some up?
Well, we're possibly looking at a couple of games against an Australia A team and then one of the Super Rugby clubs. So at this point in time, that's what we're looking to try and deliver for Argentina, which is more than satisfactory to them, and would also enable us to showcase some of our emerging talent. So we're still working on those plans. They're not finally worked through yet, but we'll get close to those in the coming weeks.
What will the squad sizes be, Rob? Will they all be restricted to the same number?
Yeah. SANZAAR a number of weeks ago, really at the request of Argentina and South Africa, who are going to have to travel and essentially stand alone over here and not have the ability to bring in any injury cover should they have any major injuries. We needed to agree to an expanded touring party, and so the number was settled on 46 players and 12 staff that SANZAAR will cover the costs of, and that will be consistent for every team.
And just to clarify, as per normal, like Bledisloe 3 and 4 would be sort of the last couple of games of the year.
No, it's a bit like the Star Wars movie scene, Tom. Bledisloe 3 and 4 will be played first and second, and then the first and second Bledisloes will be played as part of the TRC.
Alrighty. Thanks, guys, for those requests. I'll get the VNR out and audio as well.
Thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate your interest.
Thanks, Rob.
Cheers.
Thanks, Rob.